quiet, please.
I was about to say, I haven't got my main man here. But do you want to, that's it, be comfy? Come up a little bit. You know our important person is not here, although there's no doubt he is here in one form or another. Brilliant. I'll just get my drink. Okay, good evening and welcome to you all. You know that tonight we are gathering under very different circumstances. Normally it would be with absolute pleasure I would be introducing you to one of our very special guests. Sadly that is not to be. So for the first and the last time, it's only me flying solo, and I'm only too well aware that my best critics are quietly watching in the wings. Earlier this week, I'd already decided I was going to rely on one of Lord Wedgwood's favourite catchphrases, Abstantia Descindo. And with Wedgwood, I can assure you, there's been the odd occasion that we jointly raised an eyebrow and soldiered on with a smile. In 1984, when we opened to sheer delight, a little sardine can of a shop, could I have dreamt that this is where the path would lead. I well remember that first week opening when somebody I knew of reasonable acclaim came in store, not only questioning my choice of location, but style of business. It's probably not a surprise to a few of you. I had a ready answer. They conceded some points and hoped we would last. I am pleased to say that perhaps 30 years of trade has actually proven itself. Very, very briefly, my first retail experience in Western Australia was in the Wedgwood Room and Herbs. So very lucky to have learned so much via strict and thorough bosses. My immediate senior, Val Livingston, who also worked with Lord Wedgwood, very precise about display structures and concepts being complete. I had to display and redisplay again, rest assured, until it was on the mark. John Milner, an early importer of Wedgwood to the west, kept me very grounded. Nobody forgets their first serious prestige sale, and I probably was walking rather tall at the time. 2 pieces of hand-painted fruits, still live, on fine bone china. I can even tell you what they are. A squared-off bread and butter plate with the most beautiful sculptured ears. Absolutely superb. What you and I would call a cake plate today. Remember, they served the bread and butter at the table with every meal. And a delightful jug, absolutely superb. You all would have succumbed, that's not a question. But it was actually over an $800 sale. And you need to take into account this was 30 years ago. Now, the transaction had only just occurred, customer gone, I'm brilliant, I know that. By coincidence, Mr. Milner happened to be coming through the department. There were not many congratulations. Could I just get the display back up to standard? John Ahern traditionally encouraged, but it was Michael Ahern who taught me to question. To question until I got the result that was required. And it's probably partially his fault why I have pestered and cajoled many suppliers and manufacturers over the years, which I'm sure Gary can attest to with our reasonably long association through Waterford Wedgwood. Nevertheless, department store training at that time was at its best. You couldn't have picked the client, and that's still the case today. WA delivers a wealth in this regard. Piers and Jim on so many occasions commented how lucky we were to be dealing with collectors here in the West. You all know your own minds. We present you with the opportunities. You are both keen and receptive. You even tolerate my information overload. If you like the piece, you indulge. If you don't, there is not the slightest thing I can say to change the equation. And I assure you that actually makes our job doubly pleasurable. Again, behind the scenes, Jim and Piers said, you all understand it. You are not just buying just a piece of Waterford or Wedgwood. It comes with over, whether it be a vase or a bowl or a plate, it's not just that. It comes with over 200 years worth of history. What we are displaying tonight is the result of generations worth of hard slog and ingenuity. Why so many of us purists work so hard to safeguard this heritage. You know, running a show like A Sheer Delight is made tenfold easier when the team you work with not only embrace your passion, but give it hard work and commitment. And not only have I been lucky enough to work with the three amigos, I'm missing one at the moment, who are of course here tonight, she's hiding, Fiona, Sandra and Diane, but sincerely, their predecessors played their part so very, very well. Mr. Jim O'Leary, the Irishman with the smiling eyes, who we all fell in love with. Many of us married, actually. His soft lilt would bring a piece of crystal to life as he explained the intricacies of its creation. We heard the pin dropped. Quite simply, Jim loved his job, but Jim was also very good at his job. You all know that Jim was Waterford Crystal's Director of Design at Waterford. His qualifications allowed him to go from the paper to the product, and I have to say, with perfect results, delivering us volumes for the future. But he was definitely one of those at the right time, in the right place during the change of ownership of Waterford, and his calm wisdom would have more than encouraged those new owners to invest such vast sums into that new factory, into Waterford City itself. His usual articulate manner, reinforcing the argument that Waterford should remain Irish-based. And in this matter, he was definitely one of the quiet achievers. At a time when so much manufacture has gone offshore, he helped to achieve a great thing and witness its success. We were all lucky enough to help Jim celebrate 50 years with Waterford. And I can tell you, he absolutely appreciated our attention. But you know, Jim was not one for over-emotion, and at the end of that particular evening, it was the first time I ever heard or felt Jim falter. Quite simply, he was actually overwhelmed by all of you, and he said it was one of the most heartfelt compliments he had received to date. That 5-minute conversation, I've actually revisited a few times over the past year, and it's certainly carried me over the line on more than one occasion. I'm now going to have a quick sip, because I need to and I'm allowed. Here's Anthony Weymouth, big name for a big man, introduced to you all as Lord Wedgwood of Barlaston, who in turn instantly would say, "Call me Piers." It was clear to the man's grounding. Piers so enjoyed your companies on so many occasions over the years. He began to feel at home. He could relax and enjoy. This man gave tirelessly as the keeper of Wedgwood. Like Jim, he thrived on his work. He loved sharing the art, the history, the workings of the Wedgwood factory. So passionate and proud of his forebears, as of course he should have been. Piers was a font of knowledge. He was an extraordinary font of knowledge. And what he didn't know, I'd actually often thought, I like to think he'd made it up, because he would have been very good at that. But I can assure you, he was very hard to catch out, even on one of his bad days. His school holidays spent on the factory floor, you can't imagine his time as a child boarder at Marlborough College from the age of 6. So looking forward to those exit weekends, up by train to the factory probably on a late Friday afternoon to be back to school by the Sunday evening. the factory staff would have willingly adopted this young boy and young man. His awareness from such an early age to the workings of the Wedgwood factory could never have been taught from a book. He lived Wedgwood. The people Piers admired the most were the factory staff, the workers, their talent and commitment, and he in turn was dedicated to their cause. You know Piers had wonderful people skills. He not only listened and heard what was being said, but his interest in the people around him was very real and very true. That's rare in itself. But there are few I have met with such a natural perception to the goings-on about him. And of course that only enhanced his talents further. So we got to meet the Prince and the Pauper. Not my words, Jim O'Leary's. And I'll let you figure out who's who. They knew each other, of course, so very well. And a very quick tale at the time that Jim told us, this is many moons ago, years ago, of he and Piers working on the QE2 together. Jim was saying that he was returning on a long-haul flight. He was absolutely shattered. He could have been leaving from Ashir to like Australia for all we know. That's why we exhausted him. Nevertheless, Piers was there waiting at Gatwick Airport for him to collect him, in his Maserati no less, full of beans, full of life. Jim said he was like a kid ready to go on his next adventure. You can just imagine how tired Jim actually was, going from A to Z very fast. It must have been quite late by the time they got to Southampton, and Jim was saying he was ready to crash in his cabin. He was there ready to settle and regroup. Not to be, of course it wasn't to be. A robust rat-a-tat-tat at the door. Jim would have known in an instant who it was. And I can assure you, having heard it, it is instantly recognisable, pieces shattered. Open the door, there is Piers, dressed to the nines, ready for an evening of dinner and merriment, night at the tables. And it was Renee who remembered recently, because I had actually forgotten this, because this is a long time ago. He was wearing a bright canary yellow suit, silk cravat to match, and of course, as Piers only could do, although the fashionable people would get it, the socks matched as well. Typically, at a senior on parade, Jim swallowed his yawns, scrubbed up, and joined Piers, and he said they had a lovely evening, a very happy meal, a nice get-together, and then, of course, Jim made his escape as soon as possible, as soon as Piers was settled in. We recognise both men. Piers, living life to the full and relishing the ride. Jim, as ever, amiable and accommodating. I have so wondered what time Piers actually went to bed, if ever he did, because he probably did have the work the next day, and the silly thing is we'll never know because I forgot to ask. So unless Gary knows, I actually don't know. I don't know. He could have been there, I don't know. That's what I don't know. Now Piers, there's no doubt in my mind, would be sending down some lightning bolts probably tonight if we did not touch, and I'm afraid we have to, on a little bit of the subject matter that we normally do, because otherwise it's not right. On the 3rd of November, 1777, Josiah Wedgwood could inform Thomas Bentley that he could commence selling jasper in any quantity he wished. The great invention was complete. Nearing 5,000 experiments, designing a kiln specifically for jasper, creating processes that would transcend into other wares. Jasper was set to make its mark on the world. A white porous clay dipped into a liquid dark blue clay slip, the use of matured clay from Cornwall to prevent cracking, careful regulation of temperatures, as I've already alluded, a kaleidoscope of colours available. The 5 original colours, 3 blues, a lilac and a green. Now you know. To this, Josiah added ornamentation in the form of bas-relief. A slip clay taken to the leather state, already put into your plaster of Paris moulds, and then of course individually hand applied. Josiah engaged artists, both amateur, in the case of Emma Crewe, Lady Diana Beauclerk, and in this case, Lady Elizabeth Templeton. Her scenes of domestic employment, generally very sentimental by nature, flora, fauna, all very endearing. He commissioned professionals. We have begged for this for years. George Stubbs, considered to be Britain's greatest ever horse painter. These images, you're looking at that 1788, 1790 period. Jasper shapes provided the stage. Bas-relief told the story. It is so easy for me now to allude to industry and art in unison, and of course to reference the genius of Wedgwood. Still to this day, and it's featured at the front, the world demands we make Jasper in its original form. Considered one of the greatest ceramic inventions of modern history, there is absolutely no doubt we have a lot to thank Josiah and his Jasper for. You know, we go through life, we meet a lot of people, we enjoy the acquaintance, and then we move along. And then there are people who make their mark on us, some because their personality oozes, and others who quietly captivate our attention. When they happen to be really good people, wow, yeah, we've made gold. And clearly that is the case for Jim O'Leary and Piers Wedgwood. So would you finally join with me, please, in acknowledging three rather special fellows. Jim, Piers, and actually Renee, without whom I doubt I probably would have actually been here. So, West Australia's stuck. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Piers, Jim, and Renee. Thank you. Enjoy the evening. Any tricky questions, Gary now makes them up. Or Deb. And if they're really difficult, Renee's there. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.